Congratulations. We are ending our Holy Week, our Lent, and we are entering our Holy Week. And hopefully we will have more time to reflect on the holy events of these days. Our gospel that we have read before the start of the Mass, there was a line there, Jesus, a prophet from Galilee. And St. Paul also reminded us that this prophet from Galilee named Jesus is the same God assuming the condition of a slave. Let that be the base statement of our reflection today. And what was their accusation? The accusation is very clear. It is quite clear. If the picture is clear to you, you see Jesus there, you see the people at the background, and it was really nice that all of you were the ones reciting the background. So you can feel the accusation of the people. So what was the accusation? No real accusation. No real case. And Pilate himself understood it was only pure jealousy that they handed him over. Of course, you cannot blame Pilate. He is only a political person with no faith. He is not a Jew. So, but he sees who is innocent and who is not. And definitely he sees Jesus to be innocent. However, well, he is not courageous enough to stand for it. Anyway, he does not believe in any of this as yet. So he just washed his hands to signify that he has nothing against this person called Jesus and God himself. The big question is, how far can God allow himself to be insulted? How far do we allow ourselves to be insulted? Sometimes, some of us count when we feel insulted, okay, one more insult, and I will explode. Or maybe two more. It's okay. So usually we count, this guy has been bullying me since I was 15 years old. Now you are bigger. The one insulting you in secondary school, you were small. And suddenly, after secondary school, you have a reunion, you are the tallest of them. When I was when I was Form 1, in our sense, I am in the first line. And everybody with long pants, I have short pants. So, first in the line. And then, when I was in college, I'm already last in the line because my height grew. So, those who were bullying me cannot bully me anymore. So, how far can those people who bullied you allow you? How far can you allow them to insult you? And that is the same question we have with God. How far can God allow himself to be insulted? The first insult we have heard, they claim that Barabbas, the criminal, was far better than God. To Dan area. And you yourself also claim for Barabbas rather than Jesus today. Another insult that we have participated in our reading today. God's body was maltreated and scourged. Of course, we hear, we read, but it's really a good time to go deep. How much we have insulted God Himself today. We were the crowd. We were shouting all this. The maltreatment and the scourge that God allowed Himself to endure. And they say that there were, I think, really, by tradition, when they do the scourging, they have sets. I cannot exactly remember how they call it, but the first set is something to remove the skin. So after the skin is removed, then another set of skirts, the one with needles. So in order that those with no more skin, the whip can penetrate and make a wound. And I think there is a third whip. I can't remember. So it is really just the scourging itself is already torturous. And that is how God allowed Himself to be insulted. And of course, after all this, some extra. They spat on God's face, struck His head with reed and thorns. I wonder, how is that thorns? How sharp is that? I have seen, I don't know how it is called here, the aroma plant, and I see that the thorns of this plant is really very sharp and very strong. So God allowed Himself to be disrespected that much, and still more. They took off God's cloak and led Him away to be crucified. So not only physical maltreatment, but also emotional maltreatment. And God allowed Himself to undergo those insults. Of course, the final insult is really to die like a criminal in those days. See, there were two criminals, if we recall. That is the death penalty at the time. And Jesus was similarly sentenced that way. God was mounted on the cross to die. So to answer to that question, how far did God allow Himself to be insulted? The answer is clear. While we have a limit, when people insult us, there was no limit to God's allowing Himself to be insulted by men. And that was even until His body lost its human life. That is just a very real contrast between us being insulted and God being insulted, physically and emotionally, body and soul, and also spirit. That's how far we have gone. It's really good that we start the Holy Week now and we start reflecting on these things. It's good that this is the gospel, so we have time still to reflect. And hopefully as we reflect on these things, it will also somehow transform us internally. However, there was something else. No? It was just very short, but very crucial. After He lost His human life, the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. And that was a big temple. Those who have been there, I would imagine, I have not been there, But I would imagine it will be this tall. How can it be torn in two? If not by some miraculous power made it happen. A lot of meanings. One of the meaning is the breaking of the Old Testament to start the New Testament, which is started by Jesus Himself, by God Himself. And another very crucial line, which is very short, and we can also neglect it. Tombs opened, and the bodies of many holy men rose from the dead. If you notice in our creed, there is a line that says, and Jesus descended into hell. This is when Jesus descended into hell to get those just people before Him and to make them rise from the dead. And if you there is still one line after that. After His resurrection, these holy men entered the holy city and appeared to a number of people. Imagine the resurrection of the dead from their graves. I was talking about that last Sunday. Something that sometimes we can disregard. But I would not disregard it because this is very crucial for us to realize that our death, our Christian death, is truly just temporary. So we should not be afraid, but we have to prepare for it. And lastly, the testimony of the centurion and those guarding Jesus. In truth, this was a Son of God. Imagine, they were there torturing Jesus. But at the end, they realized the truth. The person they're torturing is actually God. And the question is, what is our personal testimony to all these events that we have heard? As I said, it is good that we are starting to bring this to our mind as we begin the Holy Week, because God would be waiting for our personal testimony. We can have indifference, and we mentioned indifference can be a way of stoning Jesus. But we can also allow an open mind and open heart. When we have an open mind and open heart to all these events, then Jesus can start His work of transforming our hearts, to start bringing us closer to Him. And this will be our prayer in this Eucharist today as we receive Him in the Eucharist.